Hey Tongal viewers, I'm Ryan Larkin and I'm here with Justin Johnson, the Emmy-winning producer of Netflix's Behind the FX, a digital show produced by Justin's production company, Big Machine. Justin is a former Tongaler and he's here today to answer a few questions about his work. Justin, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your work?
So I have been making online video for over 20 years now. I started from my small town of Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And it was like, the late 90s when I really started thinking of like, okay, I like video. I want to have an audience. And what are my options? Well, my options at the time were public access, which is, many people will now be not even knowing what public access is. But public access is like what is like the first version of YouTube. Maybe vaudeville was the first version of YouTube. But public access was just like a way for you to get your video stuff out to a local community. So I did a public access show and that was great. And then I'm like, oh, I also want to reach a broader audience. So I figured out how to put my videos on the internet. And really from there, was one of the first original writers for College Humor. I did College Humor's first original video. Ended up working at a startup in 2007 called Next New Networks, where we essentially were creating 100 different branded content channels for YouTube way before really there was even any monetization or anything like that. And so we were very early in terms of just creating content for all types of different niche audiences. And then after that was absorbed by Google in 2011. I was at Google for a little while before in 2012 branching out on my own to create Big Machine Productions and my own stuff.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you first started working with Tongal? How did you discover them and what were some of your early projects with them?
Well, we knew about Tongal pretty early on because I had started a website called onlinevideocontest.com where we were aggregating all these different types of folks like Tongal. And Tongal was really one of the first big players in the space of video contests. And for me, when I started OVC, it really was all about how do we find ways for creative people to be able to pay their rent doing creative stuff versus taking some crappy part-time job or whatever. And Tongal always represented interesting clients to work for, good prize pools, and just like a fascinating community ecosystem that I think was really appealing. And especially things like the Tongies and other awards just was this added layer of personality and care versus just like, here's a check and that's kind of it, that I really was gravitated to. So I think it was, I hadn't really submitted anything until really after we left Google in around 2012. And our first one was Star Wars Pringles spot that actually ended up getting some TV airtime, which was really cool. And it was a really fun process because it gave us, the things I want is like a creative place to start and like a deadline and like knowing an audience is going to see it. So Tongal really provided all those things, and it was a great way of surviving out there as a creative professional.
Can you tell me a little bit about Star Wars Pringles Spot? That title is just so intriguing. I have to know more.
Yeah, so it was a 30-second spot. I think we did a 60-second version as well. And the idea was just this kind of co-branded thing between Pringles and Star Wars. I don't even think there was, maybe there was special cans. I honestly don't even remember. We never really got access to special cans from what I can recall. How do you bring the world of Star Wars into the world of Pringles? And so we did this spot about an office worker named Jim, and he was kind of imagining this amazing scenario where he was fighting Darth Vader with a lightsaber, and there were stunts, and people were doing flips off desks, and there was chopping coffee mugs in half, and all kinds of stuff. And Eric was my production partner at the time. We had a little cameo in there as well. So it was really something that allowed us to have enough budget, along with pulling a bunch of favors, to pull together something that just really looked genuinely good and broadcast worthy, along with being able to, with the blessing of Star Wars, play within that Star Wars universe, which is something that, of course, people do a lot without the blessing of Star Wars, but to be able to do it, I know, great, like you can use, the music from Star Wars, things like that. That just was really, really cool to be able to do.
What was Darth Vader's favorite Pringle flavor? These are the hard-hitting questions.
Well,
we
yeah,
ask.
Darth didn't really respond to any of our. It was hard for him to eat the chips, because he's got the visor. So he kind of, I think it was messing with his respirator.
Yeah.
But I'm just gonna guess. Probably was like a sour cream and onion guy. When you see him without his helmet on, he kind of looks like sour cream and onion.
I feel it's a safe bet. I don't think he'd like the barbecue flavor. It would bring up bad memories. So
Yeah, he doesn't like that. The electrocution thing's not great.
being literally cooked alive will do that to you.
Yeah, don't do that.
Can you tell me about your favorite project working with Tongal?
One I definitely tell the story about a lot was a Ram truck commercial. And really, after I did my first feature documentary in 2015, that was really a light bulb moment for me to think, oh, I really love doing documentary and nonfiction stuff. I should do more of this. And there was a project that was for Ram trucks. And the idea was, here's this guy. He's got this incredible horse that's like trained and is just really this really special animal. And he does charity events and things like that. This guy, Mark, who lived in Minneapolis. And he also was a photographer who took photos of nature and stuff like that. And so part of what he do is photograph wild black bears. And so as part of the spot, he was like, hey, I'm going to take you up north a bunch of hours to take photos and stuff of wild black bears. And I got to experience in a very close circumstances as it went from sundown or it went into dusk, and then all these wild black bears started just coming in out of the woods, and he was taking photos of them and had the opportunity to like feed a baby black bear almonds out of my hand, which was really incredible. And it just was this amazing, it's one of those moments where you just kind of sit and think like, wow, I'm being like paid for this. This is my job, this experience that is totally unique, totally beautiful, and really, really fascinating. And from there on, I really was hooked and continued just submitting to more of the documentary style projects.
Yeah, speaking of documentary style projects, I remember Tongal drew my attention to your How Did Threadbanger Get So Popular video. I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about your work on that.
Well, that was one for the Created In series, which unfortunately I was only able to do 2 of, but it was that one and another one about Abby the Spoon Lady, who that one actually went super, super viral because she herself had a super viral video on Facebook and everyone started being fascinated with her. But essentially was looking at different creative people. I always like things that are like fill in the blank. So when you have a good format, you can always fill in the blank. And so I'm always thinking of like, how can I make these fill in the blank formats? So the idea was created in blank, and then you fill in like any city or country or whatever after that blank. And Asheville was a place that really came to mind because I have friends out there who are big YouTubers, and I knew if I created something with them, it would probably be popular. And so it was a really fun experience of being able to go out to Asheville and really kind of capture their day-to-day life at the time with Threadbanger, as well as get to meet. And I asked them, I was like, who else is cool in Asheville? Because I knew I wanted to do, you always got a block shoot. I knew I wanted to do 2. And they mentioned Abby the Spoon Lady, a spoon player who would be like busking out there. And yeah, it was a contact to her, and she was super open. I spent a day with both of them and got 2 really fun, about 10-minute pieces of content that I think really captured a day in the life of those 2 creative entities. YouTubers with millions of subscribers and someone who clank spoons together on the side of the street in Asheville, North Carolina. Quite different, but in a lot of ways similar.
That's amazing, and it starts off with just the most incredible drone shot too. I just have to say, kudos to you on that.
Yeah, that was. I think I got the drone for that project. It was very, very early on for me using it. So, yeah, you really unlock new perspectives with the drone. And
literally.
Now I think it's literally, and now I think they are pretty ubiquitous, so no one's super impressed anymore. But at the time, it felt like magic.
What motivates you to tell the stories that you tell? Like, how do you approach those stories especially when it's like something documentary oriented?
Yeah, that's the thing is I'm really fascinated in most any story. I think I'm especially drawn to artists and entrepreneurs. And I think that those journeys are particularly interesting because, especially for an entrepreneur as well, there's a lot of risk involved in that. And even if you don't totally make it big time or whatever, you still overcome a lot of hurdles that I think are relatable across a lot of different people's experiences. So to me, that's always kind of the anchor. And if I'm able to just be put in a new space, an interesting space with people who are doing something cool, I have no shortage of questions. And what I particularly like about documentary is, for me, I feel like I'm more of like a sponge and less of a hammer. Some directors, they're more like a hammer, and they say, I want it to be like this. Boom, there it is. Now it's like that. But for me, it's more about put me in a space with someone interesting or somewhere interesting, and I want to absorb knowledge from them, and I want to be able to filter it and turn it into something new. And I think just that natural curiosity really plays in well to documentary and the love of travel. So my goals were, after I did my first feature documentary, I'm like, okay, any project I take on, I wanted to fulfill these two goals. And my goals were, I want to travel the world and I want to meet interesting people. And everything I took on, I said, does it fulfill these two goals? And if it didn't, I wouldn't take the project on. And that was why it was great with Tongal to be able to, you can very clearly identify, will this project satiate these two particular needs of mine? Yes or no? And if yes, then I'd pitch on it. And as my work grew in the documentary space, I was able to get more and more of the projects that I pitched on.
That's really interesting. So like, as you're absorbing these stories and as you're converting them to the finished documentaries or finished pieces of media, how closely do you work with your production and post-production teams?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is with the Tongal budgets, I was all those teams. So I wasn't really communicating with and that's the whole thing. You really have to to make it, for the budgets that I was working with, to make it financially viable, I really had to do everything. And so, especially post-production, I would maybe work with like an assistant editor to at least get like the rough down. And I think that's a really important step, is to work with someone who can kind of get the basics down for you, and then you can go in and finesse it, because so much of the tedium of the initial edit is just getting the basics down. So that is definitely something I recommend. It's worth the money just to have someone else be able to like figure that out for you. So in terms of the communication, it really just was me talking to myself, and then at times, color correction, because I'm kind of colorblind, so I don't really like messing with that. And then audio mix, that's all pretty like basic, so I'm never too particular about that. It really was just me communicating. Oh wow, look at this! It's like legit, like really.
Well, there you go.
Lightning. Okay, all right.
The weather app is never wrong.
It's serious business right now. Usually at the end of the day, it was me doing everything, and I think that was just a way of facilitating my ability to like stay at a decent hotel.
I feel it's a good transition into my next question, which is most certainly not going to be a one-man band. Can you tell me about your Behind the FX show?
So Behind the FX was something that very early on Netflix had told us. It's a series for the Netflix Film Club YouTube channel, really all about the people behind the effects in terms of the big movies that come out on Netflix. And so they had always, from a very early stage of us working together, wanted to do something in the FX realm. And for myself, having a fair amount of experience being able to mess around in visual effects programs and things like that, very basic rudimentary knowledge of After Effects and that kind of thing, it's certainly something I had interest in. And it really was about connecting with the very first project and connecting with the first post-production supervisor who was going to spill the beans in terms of how they created everything. And so the first one that we worked on was for a movie called Project Power. And when I saw the early screener of that, there was a sequence where someone basically has this power of like igniting themselves on fire.
Machine Gun Kelly,
MGK. And just the effects work was so incredible. I hadn't seen fire effects so convincing. And right away I'm like, oh, this is the scene that we have to talk about. And it worked out great because not only was that an incredible visual effects scene, but there were a lot of unique apparatuses that they had created specifically for this scene to really make it work as well as it actually did. So had a great visual effects supervisor, had an amazing conversation. They really opened their vaults in terms of giving us a lot of the previs and other materials that allowed them to build this effect. And from there, once we had one really solid example, it was really easy to show other visual effects teams, hey, this is what we're looking for, and this is the type of conversation we're going to have. And so, we just kept on doing them, and it really was a team effort. I would generally lead the questions, the Q&A with the director, and then hand it off to a writer who'd take the transcript, turn it into a paper edit, and then off to the editor to combine everything. But it really does hone in on my love of technology and the experience of people putting these things together. Has a lot of interesting footage as well.
What was the most surprising thing you learned while filming Behind the FX? Did somebody just blow your mind with how something was done?
Nothing really. That Project Power episode certainly was really cool in terms of how they did it. One of my favorite parts about the Behind the FX series is when we're able to get really early previs material. And in particular, I actually don't think this made an episode, but in particular, there was an episode about Midnight Sky, which is this George Clooney vehicle, and there's a lot of like cool space stuff in there and whatever. And they gave us some previs that was basically a bunch of little, like, must have been 3D printed astronauts on what looked like some kind of wire, paper pipe cleaner wire, and they were just doing like recreating these scenes, just kind of like a kid holding onto a little toy, like here, and they float over here and they float over here, and I'm like, this is so fun to see this multi-million dollar movie, and here they are just like kids playing with toys to kind of figure out how this scene is going to work. And when we get access to materials like that, I just think it's so charming and really brings you back to that like core of filmmaking, how you started, and you can start with something very simple and end up with something very fancy.
I love that, yeah, and I really hope that they release that footage sometime.
I know.
It's too good for the world not to see.
It was so interesting.
What was it like winning an Emmy? Just straight up, what was it like winning an Emmy?
Oh, I mean, I was shocked. I really had no expectation of winning. Been trying to think if it was more or less surreal, the fact it was all done over video chat. I had like my shorts on, but then like the top of a suit and tie and all that. I'm sitting.
You're not
sitting at my
supposed to admit
desk
that.
It's fine. News anchors do, so it's fine. I like rearranged the whole office and added a little bit of lighting and all that kind of stuff. I wanted my little box to look nice on screen. And no, it just not to diminish any of the work that the team did, because our series is a great series, and the people we were up against had amazing stuff as well. And I just really wasn't expecting it, and you can definitely see it in the video. The lady announces, "Oh, the winner is Behind the FX," and I just was like, in complete shock. And it took me probably a good 2 or 3 seconds to remember, like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to like say stuff now. So there was a pause, and then I have to say my little spiel. So it was really surreal, and I was content alone just being an Emmy nominated production company. So when it became Emmy winning, it was just really, really an honor. And for us as well, for Netflix to have submitted us for this, it was all there. They were proactive about it. They loved it. They submitted it. And it was just so rewarding to be able to bring that home for them. I'm sure they've never won an Emmy before. So, this is a big deal for them. Their first Emmy. Maybe they probably won a couple other awards, but I'm glad I could bring this one home for them. And I couldn't imagine better partners than them. Just the access they've given us has been super awesome.
Did you have remarks written out in advance, or did you have a bullet list? Did you just improvise?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, for the initial couple sentences, the Netflix PR people are like, "Read this thing, puppet." I'm like, all right. I just had a Google Doc with like big ass text just like up on the screen for me to read awkwardly, not memorized. And then the interviewer, or the Emmy host, she did ask like a follow-up question, which they said they were going to ask follow-up questions, but I definitely wasn't prepared for. But I'm pretty good off the cuff, so it wasn't like, it wasn't too daunting. So yeah, it was just, I had prepared remarks that I stumbled through. And I am glad I got to add a little bit of my own flair at the end as well, because that is always fun. So it just was a really surreal experience, but building on all those years of other work. And really, I'm glad that it was for a series that I was very involved with and something that is very close to my passions.
You mentioned all of those other projects. What exactly was your path from when you first started on Tongal to winning the Emmy with Behind the FX?
You know, Tongal definitely was a great place to hone my skills in terms of production, being able to take on a wide variety of clients. Our direct path to working with Netflix was through a series that we did for Wired magazine's YouTube channel. Condé Nast has a really good YouTube presence. And so it was a series about smashing things in slow motion called Battle Damage, where you would smash technology and test how durable it was. Just really that was the shell of the concept of like, let's smash things in slow motion with this spinning camera rig.
Did you also smash a Star Destroyer at some point?
Oh, absolutely. That was one of the greatest.
I'm pretty sure you smashed a Star Destroyer.
Yes, I dropped a massive 800-piece Lego Super Star Destroyer from 15 feet and like timed it perfectly with this spinning camera rig and all this stuff.
Man, Darth Vader just can't catch a break with you.
I know.
First the barbecue chips, and then you blow up his ship.
I know.
I'm just saying.
It's a big brand. So we had done that for Condé Nast, and Rachel Samuels, the producer of that, really enjoyed working with us, and we were trying to figure out what the next thing was, what the next thing was, and then she had moved from Condé Nast to Netflix, and really wanted to just get together and create more content for their channels. And so that really was the pathway to working with Netflix specifically, but certainly my production partner Eric and I, we had just learned so much about working together that led up to that Battle Damage experience that I think, worked out well in the end.
What advice can you offer to current Tonglers that are hoping to follow in your footsteps?
The biggest piece of advice I can give is in the video world and really in any kind of artistic pursuit. It's like the saying, you are what you eat. Really, you are what you create. So if your passion is you want to make a sci-fi movie, you want to direct Star Wars 28, whatever it is, but all you're doing is creating cereal commercials, no one's going to think of you as, oh, this person is going to do a great sci-fi movie. You're going to be the person that does cereal commercials. And so you really, even if, and this happens a lot, someone finds success in something that is maybe tangential to their real passions, and they say, oh, well, this is what's paying the bills. I guess I'm just going to keep directing cereal commercials, even though I really want to do a sci-fi movie. Same as you are what you make. And so you need to be very picky and very conscientious. Maybe not necessarily when you're just starting out, because you do need a couple experiments in different types of content to learn, oh, what do I really like doing? And continue being very honest with yourself, winnowing away, well, I didn't really like that part of it. I didn't really like that part of it. So you have to kind of sharpen yourself into a point to figure out what is the thing I actually care about. But the great thing about Tongal is you can choose across this wide variety of different styles of projects. And things take a lot of time, and time is a non-renewable resource. So pick things that are in line with your creative goals, not just because of the money presented or anything else, because you need to be spending your time as a creative person on stuff that is in line with your passions. And I think that's just a really important thing for any creative person to do. And certainly there are elements of aspects of production that you can learn from, but just be choosy about your stuff.
What are you working on right now? Anything of note?
I'm finishing up my second feature documentary that is going to be done in the coming months, hopefully. And that's been a project I've been working on for the last 5 or 6 years about my family secret in a lot of ways, which is essentially my dad and mom make some of the world's most realistic prosthetic nipples for women who have had breast cancer.
I really wish you'd led with the title of this movie, Justin.
Yeah, it's called Mom and Dad's Nipple Factory, and
Thank you.
It's all about that.
Can I ask you about what your hopes are for it? Where you hope to get it seen? Maybe where you hope to show it to the first audiences?
I am really excited about the festival circuit for this film. Obviously, going to a streamer it would be great, and I'm sure my investors would love that. But for me, the goal of this film, and really ever since I first stepped foot in the festival circuit, which I just love so dearly, and I really hope it comes back to full strength next year, is the ability to travel the world and meet interesting people. And that is exactly what a festival provides you, is that ability. And especially the experience of being able to do festivals with my mom, who is such an incredible people person, even more than I am. I just think she'd have an amazing time doing that. So when I think of like my goal for the film, it doesn't even have to be the big festivals. I find the mid-tier festivals often better than the big festivals because you don't get lost in the mix of everything else. But obviously I wouldn't kick Sundance out of bed if they won down or South by. It really feels like probably more of a South by film. But no, I think my goal really is to be spending a lot of time next year doing festivals with my mom or with other family members, because it is such an incredible family film that has been an amazing experience just to create as a family bonding and archiving type of event. And so that process extending into the film festival and promotion process being another adventure to go on is something I'm just really looking forward to having that, because it is just important time spent with family.
Where can we find your work if we wanted to check out anything that's publicly available? Is there a centralized place, or is it kind of scattered?
You can check out justinsuperstar.com if you want to see my documentary work. And that includes a lot of things that were done for Tongal as well. So I would suggest that.
Can you tell me a little bit about Big Machine Productions, just kind of how that came together and what your philosophy is behind that company?
Absolutely. So Big Machine Productions is the production entity that myself and Eric Beck started back in 2012 after we had left Google. And for us, our initial group name on Tongal, and it currently still is the Indie Machines. And so it was always this idea of like, we're scrappy indie filmmakers and we're creating this stuff. And as we kind of branched out and thought of taking on bigger things, it was like, how do we take this from an indie machine, which obviously paints us into a specific light, to a bigger type of entity? So Big Machine Productions is what it became. And really the core of it, certainly in the beginning years, was the hybrid of Eric and my skill sets. And for me, I'm more of a fly by the seat of my pants, kind of set up a structure and figure it out kind of person, which lends itself well to documentary. And Eric's more on the creative building, super focused, super like everything's written down to the minute type of thing. And so he would handle more the narrative side of things, and I would handle more the documentary side of things. And because our skill sets did have a lot of differences, we were able to really add to each other's work by, I help Eric loosen up a little bit, and Eric helps me be more organized, that kind of thing. And so that grew from just us creating one-off projects and occasionally series for different brands to us connecting with Netflix and really creating this incredible, super diverse, multi-talented, awesome team that we now currently have. Of course, certainly not the least of these incredible, talented people is yourself, Ryan. So people like you who are able to just bring that kind of curiosity and passion and bring in those little extra bells and whistles and thoughtfulness to everything we create. And that was something Eric and I always thought was important. How can we put thought and time and creative effort into this to make it better than it should be? And I think that's something that is woven into the DNA of all the people we have on the team, who are creative and interesting, can do a lot of things, and have a true passion for the medium. And so now, as we create 30 plus videos every month for Netflix's YouTube and socials, that is something that I think is a very important part of the company. So we're a machine. Yes, we can create things quickly, but we also want to create them with heart and put our all into them and make sure that they are truly good. And so we're a machine with heart. That's what we do.
Right on. Anything you'd like to say to the Tongal audience? Anything you'd like to say to any of your past collaborators or any of your future collaborators?
To all those I defeated in battle in Tongal, in the Tongalverse, I'm sorry. I wish you all the best. and good luck out there.
I think that is the classiest sign-off I have ever heard to your former enemies.
Thank you for pushing me to be my best competitors and occasionally defeating me as well.
Cue Eye of the Tiger.